Hi guys, muze tujyane mbereke twagiye gutembereza abana ahantu kureba ikiraro cy'inka cyangwa abantu nyine bakora business yo korora inka. Mbese izi nka zose mugiye kureba hano zose hamwe batubwiye ko ni 70,000. Mbese ni ubucuruzi bwo kuzorora. Mbese hano nta n'ibimasa birimo, nta kimasa na kimwe kiri ahangaha muri izi nka zose. Uko bazikama, uko bazorora, uko bazitera intanga kugira ngo zigume zibyara, izirwaye, izishaje, izikiri impinja amezi nk'atatu kuzamuka, ukuntu bagenda bazibika ahantu hatandukanye. Sinshaka rero gukuramo amajwi y'uyu muntu waduhaye tuwa, wadutembereje atubwira detaye zose, ubwo abatumva icyongereza muri isura. So you guys are going to see and listen to what she's saying. Mumve murumva detaye zose. Murakoze.
Sit out the window, and then you can sit next to
Yeah,
Daddy.
Destiny can go on the window.
Okay. You sit next to Daddy. Let's switch.
Damara.
And who's gonna drive?
She's gonna.
I tried to get this van pulled off.
Yeah.
And there's the cows. That's right. So this feedlot is
And we have AC off.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can,
okay.
or we'll
Yeah.
turn it down. A little,
Yeah.
just so that everybody can hear better.
Yeah.
So the heifers start here as 90-day olds or 3 months old. So they're already weaned off of milk, all that stuff, and they start here. And then we're going to take them through in this feedlot. We're going to take them from day 90 until she's 1 month prior to calving. When she gets close to calving, we ship her down to our other farm where we have all of our calves are born. We have a specialized area where those calves are born.
Yeah.
And then those cows then get milked, and then they go to whatever dairy needs them in our system. And then the calves, of course, live in the hutches down at the other farm, and then they come back up. The heifers come back up here. So what's your question?
Yeah, you can stand if you want.
Yeah, you might better stay seated though while we're on the main street, okay? Yep, so the restroom's right here.
Okay. Girls. Oh, Danny's in. Okay.
And then this is where the cows are getting milked. So while we're waiting to use the restroom, you guys can watch that process.
Wow.
So basically over there, when the cows come on, and then they're actively being milked as they go past here. And then when they, like where that brick wall starts over there on the far side, the milkers will drop off. It takes about 5 minutes to milk them out.
Wow.
I'm not sure why they stopped it. They're just starting right back up after.
And they wash them?
So the udders get sprayed with the cleaner. It's like just a wand that sprays them, and then they get wiped, and then the milkers get put on. Yeah. So basically, the milk. So it comes out of the cow. So the blue line is where the milk comes out, and then see over here, like along there, there's all that machinery on the underneath the carrot right there. And there's that tank that's like half milk. You can see the milk in there.
Oh.
And so from there it collects and then it gets pumped under the building and it goes back over here in those really tall tanks that we went past. But before it goes in those tanks, it gets super chilled. So it's 100 degrees roughly when it leaves the mama, or when it leaves the cow, and then we chill it to 36 degrees. And it's like you can feel the warm milk coming in and the cold milk coming out. It goes across what's called a plate chiller. And then that's the only processing we do of the milk, is just get it cold. And then it gets trucked up to the Phoenix area where it gets turned into cheese. Ooh. Our cows are predominantly cheese making cows, and that's because of their breed. So they're a crossbred. So when you think of milk cows, you think of the black and white, right? The Holsteins, right? The great big black and white cows. Our cows are a mixture between those Holsteins and then Jerseys. And so the Jerseys are the little brown cows. I don't see any pure Jerseys, but like over here, these ones coming. Yep. So those are going to be kind of your pure Jerseys. And so the Jersey's smaller framed, but puts more cream in its milk. So the milk is richer, which means it's better to make cheese out of. Yep.
Wow.
So,
That one.
and so it takes 7 minutes for this to make a full rotation. So that means in 7 minutes we can milk 90 cows.
Daddy.
Wow.
And each cow's giving about 3.5 gallons of milking.
Okay.
So here at
Are
this,
you mixing their milk?
yeah, their milk gets mixed. Yep.
It's mixed, okay.
Yep. And so we do look at pin per pin. In this farm, we look at like per pin output. So how much is each pin? Because we have them grouped by production levels.
Did I use the bathroom?
At our other farm, we actually have individual milk meters to measure how much milk.
Take them too. They're all done? Wow. Then after this rotation, another set of...
Yep, so basically these
This
cows
is
are just
90.
about to make it to the far side, they'll go off. And then if you look over there, this is a breeding pen, so that means they're in their production stage where it's time to breed them. And so see my coworker over there in the yellow vest straight across from us? So
I'm saying hi,
they all
Dad.
have a little electronic tag.
I'm saying
and
hi,
the
Dad,
information populates on that screen that we can just see the back
just
of.
looking at.
And then if it's time for her to get bred, then they'll sort her and breed her. And so most of these are going to be like early pregnant, so they're probably just doing pregnancy checks on these ones. But that's kind of the general. So because we do all artificial insemination, so we don't have a bull on the farm, and so when they're in the breeding pens, they'll actually have paint on their tail, and then when they mount each other, that means it's time to breed them. And so we look at their records and determine if it's time and what semen they need to get, and then they get bred. And yeah, so that's all. But that's all done on the milk cow side. That's all done right here in the park. So basically, if they get a cow that they need, as the cows go off, there's a gate they can swing, and there's what they call a palpation rail that the cows just go stand in. So it's pretty slick. And then you'll notice there's fans going in here, and in the crowd pen back there, there's even misters, because we want to keep the parlor as comfortable as possible for them. And because like they don't need the misters out in the big pens because it's not that hot. Did you steal my stuff, cow? And then and so they don't need them out there, but in here because they're all crowded together, they need the misters and stuff. So, yep. And this is actually our smallest parlor here in Arizona. So down at our Turkey Creek farm, which we normally do tours of, but the road is closed. They're doing road construction, so it'd be like another 45 minutes to get down there.
Same company though.
It's the same company, yeah. So Riverview is our parent company. So Riverview so we're milking, the majority of our dairies are in Minnesota and South Dakota.
Yeah, when I called the schedule, they said...
That's our main, kind of our main office. And then we're milking about 170,000 head of cows system-wide. And then, but here in Arizona, our main focus is raising those replacement animals for all of those dairies, including Minnesota, South Dakota. And so that's why we have here in Arizona total between the three parlors, we milk about 25,000 cows, but we have almost 100,000 heifers in our system, which seems off balance, but that's because we're raising the heifers for the entire farm, even in Minnesota and South Dakota. Yeah, so every cow that's in our system has come through whether they're in Minnesota, whether they're in South Dakota, they come through this system for the heifer
Pretty much
development.
the main focus here.
Yeah, so our main purpose for being in Arizona, and people are like, how come, Minnesota, South Dakota, why Arizona? Well, it's the climate. So we're a lot cooler, even in the summer. We're 5 to 10 degrees cooler even than Tucson. And then in the winter, of course, we're much, much milder than Minnesota or South Dakota. So we have this really perfect wet weather to raise cattle here. So.
I think we're gonna...
You guys good? Everybody potty?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
وعاوزين تنزلوا جراحة هي. Okay.
So you can see the cows, they're coming in from the pens, but see how that concrete raises up?
Yeah.
So that's why they don't even really realize that they're up high. That's just on their level. But for us, they've got to be up so we can get those milkers put on. Right? Makes it much easier if you had to bend down and put every milker on.
Yeah.
That would just be asking for back injuries, and no one would want to do that job. We already struggle getting people wanting to put milkers on anyways. So if you look back around the corner here, you'll be able to see the guys putting, so he's right there putting the milker on.
I wanted that to be my job too.
We're always hiring milkers. So if you look back around the corner here, you'll be able to see the guys putting, so he's right there putting the milker on.
I wanted that to be my job too.
We're always hiring milkers.
What is your pay?
So they start $1 above. I think right now they're what's minimum wage right now?
I think
10.
in Arizona.
No, it's like 13 something.
Oh, 13.
Yeah. So I think they start. I think, don't quote me. I think they start at 50, like $1.50 above minimum. But then we also pay overtime. So in agriculture, you aren't required to pay overtime, but we as a company think we need to pay overtime.
Machine's sucking.
Yep. And so the machine is just a vacuum. Yep. And it kind of pulsates to mimic like the suckling of a calf. So these cows got milked this morning. You can see now they're just all chilling out. When I come back, I'm coming back as a milk cow because they work, right? It takes an hour for a pen to get milked. So they work technically 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
The rest of the time they get to sleep and eat and hang out with their friends.
Okay.
I'm like, sounds like a pretty sweet gig to me. And your food is just brought to you and you can eat as much as you want.
Yeah.
And so the dairy itself, the milking part of the farm, was built in 2003, and then Riverview bought the property in 2015, and we added the heifer grow yard. So we built all of the feedlot pens that we're going to drive through. And so that trailer on the scale right there, so everything gets weighed that comes on the farm, whether it be milk or that comes on or leaves the farm, whether it's milk or feed or whatever. That is a super tanker. So normally a milk truck holds about 6,000 gallons. This super tanker truck holds 75,000 gallons or 7,500 gallons. Sorry. So pretty significant difference. And the reason that they use these super tankers for us is because we're far away from Phoenix, right? So it's about a 3.5 hour drive for our milk. So most of our milk gets hauled out into those super tankers. And then if we look over here, this is just kind of a fun thing to show you. I might show you over there. Actually, probably a better spot to show you than right now. In the morning tours, this is perfect. But if you see where the cows are standing, or they're standing to eat, see how it's kind of damp?
Yeah.
And so what happens when they go in to get milked, that plate that this spotted cow is standing on actually lifts up, and the water flushes and takes all their manure. And so we'll try to catch it on one of the other pens.
One was pee.
Well, you know what? You know what about cows? They just pee wherever they happen to be.
Yeah.
They pee and poop wherever they happen to be standing. They're not like us. They're not trained to use the potty. And so then you'll see like this pen got scraped, and so the milk cow pens get scraped and cleaned every day. The heifer pens get scraped once a week. And so to keep them tidy, and we actually store the manure in the pen. The dry manure gets stored in the pen, and so and then we'll haul it out to our fields. And then this is, so everybody always asks me, who lives in the big house?
Well, I know, that's beautiful.
The guy that built the original dairy, Mr. Faria, that was his house. Now we just use it as a guest house. And then the pond has actually been here since the 90s. And we had talked about possibly filling it in because we're all about water conservation. But it's become a major waypoint for the migratory birds. And so the birding community was like, don't take out the pond. So we left the pond. So these calves just got here. So these are on our right side here. These are the 90-day-olds, and see how they're eating just a corn with a pellet. That's the same feed that they eat in the hutches. So down at Turkey Creek, they live in individual hutches, and then when they get here, they're gonna that now I call this cow kindergarten. I was a school teacher, so I create everything to school. So they've got to share space. They've got to eat out of a feed bunk. They've got to drink out of a common water source. They've got lots of room to kind of freedom. And so this is our highest stress time in these calves. So you'll notice some of them are written on our left here. Some of them have writing. Yep, these are calves. They're about 3 months old.
Babies.
And so if they get sick, we have a team that comes through every single day. They actually come through twice a day. And anybody that's sick, they're going to doctor. And so the pink that we see every now and then, that's one that was sick at some point.
One calf was laying down.
Yeah, they lay down. And sometimes in the mornings, when it's been a cold night and when the sun comes out in the mornings, they'll lay on their side and they'll almost look dead.
Oh.
Because they're just totally snoozing. Yeah. Like there's one right now. She's not dead. She's just sleeping.
Yeah, the one.
Calves are baby.
Yep. Baby cows.
Yep. So these are all girls.
Oh.
So these are all heifers. These will all grow up to be milk cows.
Wow.
Because you can't milk a bull.
No. No.
So, yeah, the pink there'll be a few here and there. Our team is really, really well trained, and so, like, I've actually worked with this team, and I grew up in the livestock industry. I feel like I can see a sick cow, and they'll be like, that one, and I'm like, that one's not sick.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
pretending.
then you temp it, and it's sick. So, these guys are really, really good.
at that.
And so, when you have livestock, you are going to have animals that you just can't, especially when you have them this many. But we have like a 1% death loss in this system. So that's in the industry, that's really, really good. Especially with young cattle.
Yeah, these are all girls.
Yep,
Yeah.
all girls, all
That's
future
why-
milk cows.
That's why they're cute. Yeah.
The boys are cute too when they're
Well,
this
the boys
size. So we use sex semen, and so we're getting 95% female,
The boys
And
are
then-
the big calves.
and then the boys are so that 5% we actually feed them out in so we have another calf ranch in New Mexico, and so we ship them there, and then we feed them out for beef.
In Mexico.
In New Mexico, in Clovis, yep. And so we also do,
One cow is digging its head.
Yeah.
They're eating.
and so we do, so if we were to breed every single animal in our system to that sex semen, we would have too many heifers, right? We'd have too many females. So our older cows and our cows that don't get pregnant as easy, we breed them with beef semen, so limousine beef semen, and that creates what we call a terminal cross in the industry, meaning that all of those crossbreds become beef.
Wow.
And so so here we raise the heifers, in New Mexico they raise the beef. And so that's why the male dairy calves that are all dairy with no beef in them, they go to New Mexico, to that farm. So.
So how about those old who can never?
Yep.
produce
So when the cows retire, I like to say, or the cow they can't produce milk anymore. I always say they have a career change, and they become part of the beef world. So they go to slaughter, and most old dairy cows, because in the United States you can't split a carcass. If the animal's over 30 months of age, it's a safety thing, a food safety thing, and so they get basically the cow, all the meat on the cow gets ground up. So most of like your kind of standard hamburger is usually old dairy cow.
Oh, okay.
So do you have those here?
So no, so when our cows get cold, we ship. It's called culling, so that we cull them out of the herd. We take them out of the herd, and we're gonna ship those. We have a truck that comes and gets them once a week. So, and then this is a runoff lagoon. So on the feedlot, any water that falls, we have to catch, and then we're gonna actually pump that water out onto our field. So there's 20 pivots that are connected to the main manure lagoon, and also because it's so nutrient rich, it actually saves us a fertilizer, right? So it's a really good thing. And then as part of the rules, we have to catch that water because you wouldn't want it because it is, it's got poop and feed and all that. But in Arizona, we don't have really strict guidelines, but we do the guidelines of the strictest state, and in our case, it's Minnesota. So these are built to Minnesota standard. So they're built for a 100-year rain event. They're they're clay lined, so they're impermeable, so that water doesn't soak into the aquifer because it is, it's poop water. And we did actually have a flood in the summer of 21, and that first lagoon actually did overflow, but it was because we had sheet flooding coming off the fields. And so if you look now, you might be able to see there's on the other side of that far fence, there's a little berm. So now if we were to get a major rainstorm, the whole farm has a berm around it. So the rainwater doesn't come into our lagoon, just the runoff from the feedlot would go into the lagoons. So
my understanding, you will use this water
for irrigation. Yeah. So we'll use it.
It's already mixed up.
Yep. And then see, you can see these lagoons are what's dry right now, so they're really dry. But then every 5 years we'll actually go in. They build up kind of some sludge, and so every 5 years we go in and clean out that sludge. That sludge also goes on the fields. So all of our manure. So see the mountains in these pins over here. See how that looks like the cows have mountains. Those are just manure. So those are manure, and then we'll spread. We do a little bit of spreading in the spring. So we've done some manure spreading. I think right now they're actually, those are manure trucks, those red trailers. So we do a little bit of manure spreading in the spring, but the majority of our manure spreading is done in the fall. And it's actually really beneficial for these cows to have these mountains during the monsoons, right? Because it kind of gives them a spot to be up out of if it really rains. They have a dry spot to lay.
Wow.
Oh, this is a good shot right here.
And so as we've moved this way, you've noticed the cattle have gotten bigger and older.
Yeah.
So they're actually now, so they start out in pins of 30, then they go into a pin of about 240, and then they come into pins of around 500. Oh. And so once they're in these pins, they're just going to stay in these pins until they're old enough to breed. And we start breeding at when they're 10 months old. They actually start cycling when they're 6 months old, but they're not mature enough, so we don't breed them until 10 months. And that's actually fairly young for across the industry, but we've seen it's actually very successful. We end up the cows that get made from that breeding end up being really good cows. So so we start breeding them. And so what we're going to do, and you may have noticed there's a flag right here, the orange flag. Those cows they're currently being synchronized. So we put MGA in their feed, which basically stops them from cycling. So it's like birth control. And then and they'll be on that for 2 weeks, and then a week after that they'll get pulled off of that, and then we give them a shot of Ludolice, which causes them all to start cycling at the same time.
Yeah.
So like this afternoon, when we find that pin that's going to be bred tomorrow, it's like a college party. Everybody's mounting everybody. Everybody's in heat. So and then the guys will come in. They actually start at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they will and they'll breed they'll breed anywhere between 1,100 to 1,400 head is they're going to breed on that Friday, because they're all in heat, but only about 60% of them settle or get pregnant, and then the rest go into conventional heat detection pens, where we'll see some in here in a little while. They have pink paint on their tail heads. These ones aren't quite old enough yet to be bred. And then every cow see the little white button in the top of their ears. So they've got the yellow ear tags, and then they've got a little white button. That's actually a little chip. That's an electronic chip.
Yeah.
And so anytime we do anything to that cat with that cow, we can scan that ear
And
tag
you
and
can
say,
see.
okay, yep, this cow
They
got
did.
a shot, this cow got vaccinated, whatever, this cow was sick.
Yeah.
And then I can actually look up, I have an app on my phone that I can look up any animal on this farm, and I can tell you its entire life story.
Wow.
So I like where it was
Social
born.
Security.
It's almost
Yeah.
It's like where it was
Our
born,
Social Security, guys.
who its parents are, if it's ever been sick.
Wow.
In the case of the cows, how many calves it's had, like its whole life is all.
Wow. Grandkids.
Yeah.
Related to who?
Yeah. Wow.
But you don't have a name, of course.
They do.
So their names are their
Their
tag
tags,
numbers.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few that get named. Like there's one of the main milk cows.
Yeah.
One of the milk cows up here, she stands out. She's like a gray color,
Yeah.
so she's like a Roni. Like so, she almost looks like this kind of the same color as a donkey.
Oh.
So the guys call her burra, which is
Yeah.
burro is
Yeah.
a donkey in Spanish, and so. But anyway, so a few of them get names, and then this is our feed center. So this is alfalfa number 1 hay. We feed both number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is for the milk cows, so it's a higher quality, more protein. Number 2 we use as a forage to feed our heifers because we have so many heifers. And then in this area here, which is hopping today, is where we have our commodities, or what we would call our concentrates. And all of those, most of the commodities that we feed besides ground corn, are a byproduct of some other industry. So like DDG is called dried distillers grains, and so it's a byproduct of ethanol production. So basically they take the corn, they get all the sugar out of the corn, and all that's left is protein. And that's and cows can take that and make it into delicious meat and milk and all the things that we love. I always say cows have superpowers.
Yeah.
You may have picked up that I like cows. It's a thing. And then as we go this way, so we were talking about cows that get cold out of the herd. So these are actually heifers here that couldn't get pregnant. So for whatever reason, they weren't able to ever get pregnant, and so they have now been. We're now fattening them, and they'll just go into the meat industry.
Oh.
Because if we were to cull, if we were to cull them at the breeding size of like 700 pounds, they're worth almost nothing. But if we feed them out and get them up to an actual butcher weight, then we actually can make some money on them. So, so we send. I'm not sure how many of those we send every week, but we have I don't know. There's 3 or 4
Can I
pins.
buy
of them.
one from here?
No. Everything that leaves here has to go straight to slaughter.
Yeah.
Because we are we're what they call a closed herd, and because we operate in so many states, if we aren't a closed herd, then we have to do all these disease testings for every state that we go to. But because we are a closed herd, we have an agreement with all those state veterinarians that we don't have to do disease testing. And so that's the main reason that we can't sell anything. The only thing I am allowed to sell are day-old bull calves. So the little steers, the little bulls that are born, the boys that we were talking about. I do sell a few of those here locally, but very few. Just because there's not that much to do. I mean,
One now?
we don't have it. I already sold them all the ones we had this week. So.
Anything coming up?
Well, if you want one, you'll have to get in line.
Yeah.
Can I get in line?
You can you can get in line.
Stand up and
It'll be like probably a month because I have like 4 people in front of you. Are you sure you want a bottle calf? You got to feed them a bottle. Like they're babies. They're like 1 day old.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, maybe he's changing his mind
I
now.
thought they were mature ones.
No. Just the baby. We only sell the baby ones. Yeah.
Can they survive?
I mean, they're hard to raise if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, babies.
Yeah. So as we've moved this way, these are now pregnant heifers. So we preg check them. Once they're pregnant, they go into a pregnant pen, and then we preg check them at about 40 days pregnant, and then we will re-pregnancy check them at 100 days pregnant, because during that first 90 days of pregnancy, there's potential loss, right?
Loss, yeah.
And so there about 1% of them will lose the calf during that first try. So it's like a tiny percent, right? But when you're talking, 1,500 a week, that 1% adds up, right? So we want to catch those, give them an opportunity to get pregnant again, or cull them and not feed them for another 8 months and then not have a calf, you know. So so this is harvest right now. So we're harvesting wheat. We're just about done. I think it's supposed to be done today. And so what you can see what they do is they chop the whole wheat plant, and then these dozers drive on the pile and compact it, and then we cover it with plastic. And so what happens is it creates an oxygen-free environment, and the feed ferments. So it's we're essentially pickling, because it's green when it's chopped, and we're essentially pickling that product, and then that preserves it. And then the other thing that it does, because it's fermented, and cattle, that's how cattle digest feed, is through fermentation in the rumen. It's actually almost acts like as a probiotic, if you will, which is a really, really great way. It's a really good feed stuff for cattle, because they can actually get more out of a fermented feed. Like if we were just to feed them this right now, they wouldn't be able to get much out of that. But because we ferment it, it actually allows for that feed to get more out of it. And so you can see these trucks just back up here, and they're offloading right now.
Yeah.
And then the dozers will come up and pick that up and take it onto the pile.
Oh my, mountains of food.
Yep. And so that's this year's wheatlage. This pile that's right here that we're actually feeding out of, this is last year's wheatlage. And when we get done with this harvest, the goal is to have a 1.5 years worth of feed on the feed pad, because we feed 3.5 million pounds here a day, and there's no one else that does silage. So if we were to not have so say we had this summer, we have all of our corn destroyed in a hailstorm, we have something to feed the cows, so until we can get something else grown. And so that's why we do it that way. And the feed will last essentially forever. Like once it's fermented, you don't have to worry about it like going bad if you don't feed it all within a certain amount of time. Sort of like pickles, right? You can have pickles in your fridge for, I don't know. My husband just finished a jar of those little yellow hot peppers, the chilito en cretitos. And he just finished a jar, and I think I bought it for him like 4 years ago. And you know, but it's fermented, so it stays good forever. And that's the same concept here. And so all this hay under the tarp that's all going to be that's all forage for the heifers, the pregnant heifers. So because those heifers are pregnant, they gain weight really easy, but we still got to feed them, because they're not only are they growing themselves, they're growing a fetus, and so they really need fiber and protein. And so alfalfa hay is a really good source of protein without the starch. So like your wheatlage and your corn, well, more so your corn silage, but your wheatlage does have some starch, and so the alfalfa is actually a little bit better feed. So their feed is both wheatlage and alfalfa, and then by adding the protein from the alfalfa, we can actually save on the protein we have to buy, right? Because that's our most anytime you're feeding cattle, your most expensive feed ingredient is going to be protein. I'm not sure, these ones look fairly early pregnant. And so when they're cows are pregnant 283 days, which is essentially 9 months and 10 days. So when they're roughly 8 months pregnant, they're going to get shipped down to our Turkey Creek farm to calve out. So on Thursdays normally, but I'm not sure, I think they've been spreading it out because of the road construction. So this road right here where these trucks are coming in, just beyond the farm, is closed. They're paving it right now. And so we've had to do a lot of rearranging, because normally it's like 10 minutes between farms, but now it's like 45 to go from, because you got to go out and around and then back in. So, but the road construction's done at the end of this month, so, and it's going to be paved. And this road out here, the Shelton Road that used to be 35, is going to be 55. I can't wait.
Oh.
Because it's going to be wide and paved. So, but the project portion of it is a little bit annoying. So, And so, and you can see they're pretty content. They're just eating, hanging out, doing their thing. And the other thing that we do is, because we have so many cattle, rather than try to like take our cattle to a central location to doctor them or to vaccinate them, like, so if these cows need vaccinated, we'll just like let them get hungry, meaning we'll let their feed bunk get empty. And then when the feed truck comes, this top bar actually rotates. And so when the cows stick their head in to eat, it locks. And then their heads are all locked in. And so then we can just go down and give them all a vaccination, or we can go down and pregnancy check, like they're doing that in the next alley over. But it's funny because the cows are like, they're so used to it, like they're not, it doesn't even stress them out. They're standing there being all normal, their normal selves. See what they're doing, but this shows you what it looks like when the cows are locked in here. So right now they're trying to get the few that don't want to lock in. Oh no, they're kicking those ones out. And so see how they're locked in? That top bar is rotated. And so they can't take their heads out. But I stress these two out because I'm right here. But if you look down the row, you can see the cows are not stressed at all. Like they're super, super chill. But that just shows you. So I think they must be preg checking. What's today? Trying to work. So yeah, so they'll come in and preg check all of these, and we do that with an ultrasound. And so, but you can see the cows are not like, they're used to it. They're like, whatever. These two are all like, we don't have any feed. Where's our feed? But they're pretty used to it. So the cows are stocked at a 1.5 cow per headlock. Yeah. And so when we lock in the whole pen, we've got to open down on we open into the next pen. So we'll like shut the other cows off of that pen. And so you can see they're loading manure out of the pins there. That there's a payloader down there, and he's loading out manure. And this pen right here, so these pens are in the middle of the farm. These are the milk cow pens. And this is my favorite pen because this is the chubby cow pen. So I relate with this pen. But these are cows that are getting close to time to dry them off, to let them have that break because they're going to have another calf. Or they're cows that couldn't get pregnant, but they're still giving enough milk to pay their way. But they're what we call D&B cows. And so they tend to get a little bit chubby. Because they're not milking as hard as, say, the ones in high production. And so, but if you change that ration, that affects milk quality. And so instead, this pen is the furthest pen from the parlor. And so the cows actually have to walk further. So they get more exercise, essentially, is why this pen is here. But my friend Trino, he speaks good English, but he has a really strong Mexican accent. He always calls it the chubby cow pen, and the way he says it, just oh my god, I die. And he's like, why are you laughing at me? And I'm like, because you're funny. So, but it's a really neat way to manage, try to manage that weight on those cows, because the challenge is, especially in those bred cows, those late pregnant cows, when it's time for her to calve, you really don't want her to be over conditioned. You don't want her to be fat, because when she calves and that system starts up, that milk system, you can have all sorts of metabolic disorders if she's overweight. And so we actually had right after I've been with the company 8 years, so this was a long time ago, but right after I first started, we had some heifers that we had gotten too fat, and in 1 week we lost 100 of them because they were over fat. And then those metabolic disorders, and once they start into those things, like milk fever or ketoacidosis, it's really hard to stop that problem, and so it's hard to save them. I mean, you can in the rare cases, but very rarely.